Yeah, welcome to the Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. I am John Gonzalez alongside our CBS Sports NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And Bill, look at us, a full week of new
Let's
shows
go.
almost in the books.
Week in the books, Friday energy. It's all happening, buddy.
It's all happening. Very exciting. Also, congrats to you. We just had the Champions League draw. Everybody should check out House of Champions. But we just had the Champions League draw and a good draw for Barca.
Yeah.
Not such a good draw for Arsenal, but should be fun.
I mean, look, I haven't pitched it to the bosses yet. Brand new podcast / show. I feel like Paris in April, just a spot to go. We'll channel Wemby, maybe catch the Barca PSG match. I don't know. Let's see if I'm going to pitch it next week.
Beyond the Arc from Europe, I think, is a great idea, and it makes complete sense. For now, though, we're going to talk a little basketball. We encourage everybody, though, if you're listening, to download and follow us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Throw in a question. We might read it on an upcoming mailbag episode. Later in the show, we're going to take a look ahead to our weekend forecast. Very tasty matchup between the Frenchman, Wemby, his Spurs taking on Joker's Nuggets tonight. We're going to get into that. We're both very excited about that one. But first, little LL Cool J for you. Don't call it a comeback. Kawhi, Bill. Yeah. He traveled to Chicago on Thursday to begin this 2-game road trip for the Clippers. Now, you'll remember in the previous game, he had thoracic spasms against the Wolves, came out in the first quarter, left the building, and then I was convinced he would not make this road trip. Not only did he make the road trip, Bill, he looked awesome in a win over the Bulls last night. Are you surprised that he played, let alone traveled?
Yeah, totally shocked. So I shouldn't admit this, but I'm an M. Night Shyamalan fan, or half of his films. So
why shouldn't you admit that?
Well, some of them are bad. Like The Last Airbender, I think he did that one. That really screwed up the cartoon. You know Mr. Glass, the character Mr. Glass, Samuel Jackson.
Yeah,
that is how I think of Kawhi. What a great movie. I didn't see the other two, though.
You know he's a Philly guy.
No, I did not know that.
He is, yeah. He's courtside for the Sixers a lot.
Okay. So
there's not a lot of star power in Philadelphia. It's like M. Night and like whoever's on the news, and that's basically it.
Is that how he became a master of understanding fear and horror by being a Sixers fan?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good instruction for him. All right, so Mr. Glass.
I see dead people. I see losses in the playoffs. All right, that is Kawhi for me in my brain, right? So I think I was going to have you shame me, but I think we're on the same place. I'm normally pretty chill about injuries. I'm normally pretty chill about not overreacting, especially in 2024. Guys sit out. It's hard to know precautionary versus really problematic. Obviously, teams with old info, they lie. They don't want us to always know what's going wrong. I get it. With Kawhi, I just immediately was like, okay, season over. He's broken. We'll see him next year. So I was relieved, but I was also shocked in a way that I probably should not have been, right? I was just stunned that he played because back spasms can be problematic long-term and they cannot be. It's nebulous. So I'm trying to decide, John, if I need to readjust how I view Kawhi Leonard when he's out for a game or two or goes down hard on a play, or whether it is reasonable every time that he misses a game to just assume that he's done for the year. Because that's where my brain went.
Yeah, that's where my brain went too, because we've been conditioned to think, okay, once something happens with Kawhi, it's not going to be good, right? At the very least, I looked at this road trip and I was like, all right, you probably don't even need him against the Bulls. The Bulls have been pluckier and, they've moved ahead of, I believe they've moved ahead of the Hawks into that 9 spot for the 9-10. So the play-in that nobody really cares about. But I thought, all right, you're not even going to need Kawhi. So even if he gets on the plane for the road trip, probably shut him down because you're going to have the second game against the Pels. And that one actually does matter because you've got the Pels right behind the Clippers, 3 games. Still a pretty good cushion for the Clippers, but you want to make sure that you hold on to that 4 spot and get that home first round playoff series. So I would have thought, all right, play him. If he's going to play, you play him against the Pels. You don't play him against the Bulls. I'm kind of shocked though that he played at all because we have had this whole thing with Kawhi and injuries over the years, and the playoffs are coming up and you want to make sure he's healthy. And I thought 2-game road trip, let him stay in LA. He can rest up a little bit. No biggie, right? On the one hand, it's encouraging. And on the other hand, I'm nervous.
So it's funny because I had to say he has to. My thought was he has to be okay. He's playing actual minutes.
He must be, right?
He has to be. And I let my brain go to this place, which I've not done since Kawhi, maybe his first year with the Clippers, because they made one run with him, right? They made one playoff run with him, kind of. I don't know outside of Joker and Denver. I guess LeBron and Steph, but they have lesser teams. And maybe Giannis. I think I would put Kawhi 3 or 4 on the list of guys that if he's healthy just by his mere presence, that team is a championship contender. And this is, by the way, obviously a very good Clippers team. It's not his mere presence. And I've always thought it. I've just never believed it would ever matter again, because I've never, especially last year with all the load management, and then it didn't work anyway for him and for PG. So I boomerang, John. I'm like fully in, because if they're going to let him play and they're going to let him travel, he's got to be okay. And he's been okay most of the year.
Yeah, it's such a weird injury though, right? Like he has been okay for much of the year, and that part is encouraging, and it's encouraging that he's on the road trip, and it's encouraging that he's playing, and clearly, the two of us still not doctors, as we've mentioned previously. So
True.
the doctor, like the training staff, I assume they know what they're doing, and they must have come to some accord and gone, he's cleared to play. And yet the history makes me, I'm a nervous person. By default, that's just kind of, I worry about things, right? And I worry about Kawhi. But so you mentioned, when he's out there, he automatically makes them a championship contender. And I think that's probably right, but I'm going to ask with a but.
Okay.
What is your level of confidence in this Clippers team with this version of Kawhi and this injury, right? Because there's a lot we don't know here.
So, look, if he has an injury and it limits him at all, I have zero confidence in the Clippers, because I don't have a lot of confidence in Paul George as a number one. I don't know that I have a lot of confidence in PG as a number two, which might be wrong and unfair. I think that goes away if you're playing with a healthy Kawhi Leonard. And there's, I think, legitimate skepticism about James Harden in the playoffs. Very different role here, very different expectations. I think it probably works. And obviously Russ being hurt and sort of what Russ does coming off the bench for that team when he's healthy is really important. But to answer your question, if Kawhi Leonard plays in the playoffs and can play 3 or 4 series and be okay, I think that he is good enough in the postseason to single-handedly win series for the Clippers and against really good teams like Denver, to win a game or two and maybe you get to a 6 or 7 and crazy things happen. So I'm all in if Kawhi's healthy. The question for me, at least, is not, are the Clippers good enough? It's, is Kawhi healthy enough? Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, like, especially defensively, we talked about it the other day, right, when he was locking up Ant-Man and then he got hurt and he went out and the Wolves went on a run, and the Clippers defense isn't that great to begin with. It's really not great without Kawhi. It's serviceable with him, but not terrific without him. We should mention, as producer Aaron points out here, kind of a sneaky good win for the Clippers last night against the Bulls, who I keep calling them plucky, but when you really look at what they've done recently, they beat the Warriors, Kings, Pels, Pacers, and Wolves in the last however many games.
Those are good wins.
Those are good wins. And, the Clips go to Chicago and they pull one out. All right. I want to talk about the Mavs as well, because we talk about Kawhi coming back. That's fantastic. In Dallas, they got the other problem. They got Luka. He went out. Luka exited the game against the Warriors with a hamstring injury that ended his triple-double streak of 7 straight. He had an MRI on his hamstring. It came back clean. He's going to be reevaluated this weekend. So that is good news, right? But they lost last night. They are 3-6 without Luka this season. They have no road wins when he doesn't play. And now you've got, and I'm just going to tee you up on this, you've got Kyrie Irving as your main guy, and you famously not a Kyrie guy.
So look, we've had a detente with me and the folks close to Kyrie. We've had some dinners, right? We've had some broken bread. So to those people who reached out, we had dinner in New York. You're good people, and it's not personal toward Kyrie. Yes, I'm highly skeptical about Kyrie Irving's ability, certainly to be the guy and even to be the number 2 guy. And I've got this sort of like research that I've got that might feel like I'm plucking stuff from nowhere, but to the point of last night, like Kyrie plays well often. And I think what goes unnoticed is he does not win basketball games a lot of the time when he plays well. Now, Luka may be good enough to overcome what I think are statistical realities about Kyrie being individually outstanding and on a team not as good as you would think. If you go through his record with whatever team he's been with for the last 7 years, when they play with Kyrie versus without Kyrie, every single year, except this year's an exception, every single year, that team is better without Kyrie than with Kyrie. And in some cases, the sample size is large. I'm going to look off. If you're watching on YouTube Live, I'm looking off the screen because it's so much data I couldn't memorize it. All right. Last year at the Mavs, they won 45% of their games under 500. When he was on the floor, they were 500 when he wasn't there. I won't go through all of this, but the one that really jumps, there's 2. There was a year in Boston where they won 57% of their games. There were 20, and they were under 500 without Kyrie, and they played 52 games without Kyrie, and they were markedly better when he wasn't there. They're only 3-3 this year when Kyrie plays and Luka doesn't. So it was a really great game. I know he's the number 2 and not the number 1, but we've talked a lot about all the reasons you can doubt the Mavs defensively when he and Luka play together, what that looks like. Some questions about Luka from folks around the NBA, just where they are in the Western Conference pecking order. There's so many good teams. John, literally, not this year. He's really good this year. His record is great this year. It's better when he plays than not. But over the last 7 years, literally when you have Kyrie play on your team, you lose more games. You are worse than when he sits or takes some time off or goes on a midseason vacation. And I think that is meaningful, and it certainly adds to my doubt.
Yeah, I understand why you don't like him. He's been good this year. The team has a winning record this year, and he was really good against OKC last night in a game where that's a tough place to play. OKC is excellent at home, notwithstanding the loss to the Pacers the other night on their own floor. They have been a very tough beat in Oklahoma City, and you have a Mavericks team that, as we know, has not been good without Luka this season, and you needed Kyrie to kind of put the team on his back. Now, they didn't get the W, but I thought he did pretty much everything that you could possibly have asked reasonably for Kyrie to do against that team last night. So I hear what you're saying, but this season is a significant caveat, I think.
Reasonable conclusion, and maybe you're right. And again, to the people who are in Kyrie's camp that I've hung out with, not personal. Hope I'm wrong. Hope Kyrie can, cut down the nets and add another ring. I've just heard this story before. I know and by the way, on that Brooklyn team, there were some pretty good players. On that Boston team, they were younger, but there were some
the Brooklyn
pretty good
team,
players.
They never really were together.
I'm just saying that it's not as if I'm making a case that Kyrie has had to, hasn't been effective and he's had to carry a bunch of bums. When he plays with great players, he has literally been a net negative. And I do think, look, maybe you're right. I think that Luka might be one of those talents who's so good that it looks like it works in the regular season. But I'm a Kyrie skeptic. And until that guy wins something significant without LeBron, right or wrong, that's kind of where I'm going to live.
I know that the MRI came back clean and they're going to reevaluate him this weekend. But in the same way that I worry about Kawhi, I look at Luka and not to body shame, everybody, body positivity for everybody, right? But I do worry about like what kind of condition he's in, and hamstrings can be tricky.
So this is the recency bias because it had happened 4 days ago. I would again be chicken little running out, skies falling. But the fact the Kawhi thing just happened, I found myself thinking, okay, I got to probably slow down on how alarmist I am feeling. The answer is I don't know, and I haven't been able to get answers. And in this time where load management, by the way, it may or may not work, but it is a philosophy that people apply when guys are healthy. Certainly, if you're banged up, you're going to be extra cautious with Luka. So the answer is I don't know. I'm not that worried until I have reason to be, and I'm trying not to react the way that I did with Kawhi, where I just thought it was over.
There's just so many moving parts with this Mavs team, and it's been really hard to pin them down all season long, right? I mean, like even when you have Luka and Kyrie, we've discussed this on various CBS Sports Properties HQ here on this show, that we're kind of not entirely sold on the Mavs right now. They're in the 8, so they'd be in the play-in, but they've been so insanely streaky. If you remember before the break, they won 7 in a row, and we're like, man, they figured it out. They went and got PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who, by the way, Daniel Gafford went and scored 33 straight buckets.
I know, Wilt's record.
Yeah, only Wilt
missed it on
I mean, you know that I'm a big Gafford fan, but I thought, hey, he protects the rim. He's super efficient. He plays defense. He's switchable. And then they took him out of the rotation, right? So they win 7 in a row going to the break. Afterwards, they immediately go 1-5 versus the East, and they allow 120 points on average to all these like really awful teams. Then they won 4 in a row after that, and then they lost to OKC last night. So I have no idea what to make of this team. And at some point, you'd think that they would figure this out, right? The rotations continually change. I don't think enough, they know. I don't think
they're good. Here's the thing. I don't think they're well coached enough. I don't think they're good enough. And I think if they were in the Eastern Conference and we were presuming Luka was healthy, I probably would have a lot higher level of optimism about their ceiling. But wherever they finish, whatever happens, I'm trying to think what teams I actually think they're better than in the top 10. I mean, forget the top 6. Forget if you make it to a 7-game series. If you're any of these teams, I think they're better than the Warriors and the Lakers, who obviously both those teams we'll discuss later are, as it stands now, not going to make it out of the play-in. It's not even that the Mavs are bad to me, although I have doubts. I think and we've discussed it. They're just not good enough because the West is so, and you've talked me into the Pelicans, right? So now I'm kind of like, New Orleans is a pretty good basketball team.
Pels are interesting.
Let me talk the Clippers.
Let me run this past you because there's a little bit of there's a little bit of push-pull for me because I like watching them play. I like offense. I like teams that get out
Yeah, they're
and
fun.
run, right?
Yeah, they're
They're
fun.
fun to watch. But do you think they can win this way? Because I was looking at this earlier. They're 6th in fast break points, which I love. Get out and push it.
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
9th in pace. Again, get out and push it. However, defensively, as we know, they're challenged, right? 21st in defensive rating, and they've been even worse since the All-Star break. They've fallen to 28th since the All-Star break. So on the one hand, they're kind of like,
which is crazy,
like
by the way, given the
Pacers.
moves they made.
Given the moves, well, this was my whole point about Gafford and PJ Washington, right? Because post All-Star break, pre-All-Star break, they get Gafford, and they start to look good, and they put him in the lineup, and they got him and Lively, and they're challenging people at the rim, and they're playing good defense, and then they like completely took him out of the rotation. They're closing with Kleba, did a little bit of that again last night, and it's kind of hard for me to parse because they're sort of like Pacers West in a way. They're super fun to watch offensively, but defensively they're challenged.
Which, by the way, as producer Aaron points out, it's a really good point. That pace thing is new because Luka used to be the guy that would slow it down, massive usage rate. I didn't mind it because I think he is mesmerizing to watch, but there would be a lot of people watching hoops who would just be, oh my God, man, you have a shot clock. You don't have to use 80% of it before you get into the play. So it's interesting. Can it work for the Pacers? Can it work for the Kings? Can it work for teams that play really fast and who are defensively suspect? I think the answer historically has proven itself to be no, especially when you do have basketball teams that can play really high octane offense, hit a lot of threes, can get out and run, but also, by the way, are really good defensively. That's why that whole balance thing matters. So it's a no for me, but I'm with you that Luka might be in a vacuum by himself, not the team, the most interesting player to watch on any given night in the NBA. He's definitely like one of the 2 or 3 guys. Steph's probably still up there, but some of that might be nostalgia. It's probably still true. But in terms of it translating, they're not good.
That's a really good point because part of Luka's appeal is his dad bod game, right? His YMCA game, which is like he's sort of like slow motion Jello out there. He's cooking people the same way that Joker cooks people, like in a way that shouldn't happen, right? You're like, how can he move that slowly but be that good? And yet this Mavs team is pushing. But I think that that's part of their identity of crisis, right? Like maybe the way they're playing doesn't fit their personnel. And their defensive issues just make no sense to me, especially after those trades. But I don't know. That's been this team all season long, super streaky. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to look ahead with our weekend forecast. And you and I are very excited about tonight's game between Wemby and Joker. We're going to do a lot of Wemby talk. On the other side, that's next.
It's time for the madness.
And CBS Sports HQ has your wall-to-wall NCAA tournament coverage. We got your game highlights, expert analysis, and insights all the way to the Final Four. Start and end your March Madness coverage with CBS Sports HQ.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez. He's Bill Ryder. If you're watching us, or if you're listening to us, maybe every now and again, check us out on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, turn on notifications so you can see our smiling faces when we go live like we're doing right now. It's very exciting.
I got 2 mugs, by the way. Look, you can also catch this.
You're drinking out of 2 mugs right now.
I got a coffee mug and I got a water mug, and I almost grabbed the wrong one earlier. It was very awkward. Yeah, that's the magic of the YouTube show.
Yeah, there needs to be delineation between those. You don't want to mix your water into your coffee mug. I understand that. All right, so we're going to do our weekend forecast. We're going to look ahead to some games. And tonight, starting it off with a bang, Bill. We've got Wemby versus Joker in San Antonio tonight. And you and I wanted to do a little bit of Victor Wembanyama conversation because I think there was some question about him coming into there were very high expectations for him, but nobody really knew what he would be able to do until he actually got into the league because his frame, it's slender, right? He can do a lot of different things, but there were questions about, the rookie wall. Would he be able to sustain it over an entire season? What would it look like on a bad team? Would he be able to buoy them? From an individual perspective, for me at least, he has exceeded all expectations and then some, right?
And I like hype. I'm into like whoever, right? Yes, and the expectations were massive. And I'll also throw this in too. I think the fact that it came from abroad is still a thing that certainly the casual fan, I'm not sure that they don't see him in college. We should be over it with Luka and Giannis and all these other guys. But I think there was doubt strong. Yeah. I think a lot of us just thought like, okay, maybe he'll be great in 2 or 3 years, sure, but not.
People were hitting him with baguette bowl. I mean,
right.
Like that's what people thought, right? Some people, not all people. A lot of people thought he was going to be excellent and be a transcendent star. I don't think anybody thought it would be this soon. Yeah.
The thing about him that's the biggest compliment for me is I can't not watch him play now. It doesn't matter. And that team is awful. And other than Wemby, I think they're hard to watch. I cannot get enough of this dude, not because of what he's going to be, but because of what he already is. He's not a league pass watch in the sense of the Thunder a few years ago, whoever you want to like, or Atlanta several years ago. Like, oh, this is fun. And maybe the guy is on his own individually one of the best players in the NBA. Ways to go and all that stuff. He's one of the best players in the NBA.
And what I've been impressed with is the development, right? Because he started out not shooting the ball particularly well from distance, and he's really improved as a shooter over the course of the season. He's shooting 41% from three since February, which is outrageous.
Amazing.
Because if all of a sudden his 3-point shot is locked in, the league's in a lot of trouble. Also, Bill, he's on pace to become just the second rookie ever to lead the league in blocks, which is incredible. By the way, do you know who was the first rookie?
I have no idea. I'm so bad at trivia. You could ask me the name of my second kid, and I would guess Jack, which is not the right answer. I panic.
It's Henry.
When it comes to trivia. Henry. Yeah, no, it's Henry. Henry's the right answer. No, who's the first rookie?
Well, I just mentioned Bol. There's a relation to Bol.
Okay, so it's his dad.
It was Manu.
That's a pretty good one. I want to circle back really quickly to your shooting point because it also, I think, connects with how people were so ready to just unload on this dude. And you know this because you've been covering the game for a long time, but a lot of people who've covered the game for a long time, for whatever reason, forget that Summer League has featured numerous talents who didn't play well in Summer League that has absolutely zero bearing on how they're going to play. Forget their careers, their rookie year. I was at Wemby's first Summer League game, right? That big event in Vegas. Sure. And he did not play well. He did not shoot well. And the glee that was in that arena and the sports writers that I was sitting around, not all, but many of whom, at least to me or to each other, were overreacting. Oh, yeah, welcome to. It's amazing. He didn't shoot well in that game. It is amazing how much people, A, how far he's come from a shooting perspective from that first moment, but B, how much people I think were primed, to your point, to take how slow the Spurs were going to be with him, maybe some limitations in minutes early on, maybe some struggles, and just say, aha, he's not what we said he was. And so under all that pressure, credit to that dude too, because the expectations were massive.
I mean, they've been massive for him, and he has exceeded them. I mean, he keeps improving. I sent you guys on our group text the other day when they played the Rockets, this freak move that he had. I mean, we're talking about his shooting, we're talking about his defense, but the athleticism is also there, and that length that allows him to do things that other people can't do. So there was this video from the Rockets game. He did something I'd never seen before. They double teamed him along the baseline. He was outside the paint, and he pivoted, put one foot inside the paint, and dunked off of the wrong foot from very far away. It shouldn't have been possible, but he did it because his go-go gadget arms allow him to.
Well, that's a great go-go gadget. What a disturbing cartoon that was, by the way.
I used to love that show. We're dating ourselves, but it was a great cartoon.
Retrospect. They redid it too. I think they redid it a few years ago. All right, here's a question I have for you about him. So when you vote for defensive, so I have a vote, right? One of these folks that get to vote. I have these rules. Maybe they're dumb, maybe they're not dumb, but it's a rule for me. On MVP, it's not the whole thing, but I put a lot of credence to where you finish, where your team finishes in the standings. It's significant or a requirement, right? Jason Tatum's not the MVP because the Celtics are the best team in the NBA, but if you are an MVP level guy like Luka and your team is not near the top, I'm probably gonna dock you. And on Defensive Player of the Year, I have always had, and this is hard and fast rule, you got to be on a good defense to be Defensive Player of the Year. And I'm curious your take on this because I haven't started calling GMs and scouts and coaches, and they take every call when it comes to awards because they're trying to lobby. Do you think I can or should suspend that rule? Defensive Player of the Year consideration, the Defensive Player of the Year guy on my ballot, there's 3 names, even number 1, for a guy who's on a Spurs team that is bad defensively.
I'm glad you brought this up because the Rookie of the Year race, as everybody has concluded, is over. It's been over. Chet, you had an incredible season. You're helping. No, seriously. I mean, in any other year, it's Chet Holmgren, and he's doing remarkable things for a team that's challenging for first place in the Western Conference and playing really meaningful minutes. Yeah, that's how good Wemby has been, that he's like now out of the discussion. There was a discussion at the beginning of the year, and then it just ended. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up Defensive Player of the Year because I think he should be considered. I know that there's this thing about, can you have a Defensive Player of the Year? I think it's still going to be Gobert, and I think it probably should be because the Wolves play through their defense and they've got the best defense, is the best defensive player. But should he be considered? Absolutely, because he has been transcendent. And I don't mean to be basic about this, but sometimes I am a little bit basic when it comes to these numbers. And I know that they're just counting stats, but look at his stocks, his combined steals and blocks, right? It's almost 5 per game. The guy is averaging almost 5 steals and blocks combined per game. That is like, it's mind-blowing. For anybody, it would be mind-blowing. It's especially mind-blowing for a rookie, Bill. And yes, the Spurs have been a bad team defensively, 23rd in defensive rating over the course of the year. And I know it's only when you do one guy on off, the numbers can be a little wonky. However, I think it's significant that you go with Wemby on the court. They jumped to 7th in defensive rating. He is a game changer.
I mean, that's amazing. And by the way, it's not that like we're 17 games into the season, right? There's a big enough sample size that something like that is. All right. So here's my other question, because I've had people make the argument to me that maybe I should just not put him 1, right? Put him 2 or 3. But and he, by the way, to your point, it probably is Gobert right now. I haven't thought about it as deeply as I should. That's sort of where my brain is. But for me, like, the rule applies or the rule doesn't apply. If there's a defensive rule, then you can't vote. If there's your team defense matters, you can't put him 2 or 3. I think I'm there. I think it's reasonable right now to have him on a ballot. And I think it's reasonable if things change or he gets more votes in a certain direction than I might give him. If he gets enough ones and I put him 2, I think it's reasonable that he wins.
Draymond on his podcast the other day said that Wemby right now is a top 15 player in the NBA. And at first I was like, right, that might be a little bit much for me. And then I was like, well, Draymond, for all of his faults, this is one of those things that he would put some thought into. And I think that, like, what he says about something like this carries some weight to it. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, wow, he might actually be right about this, which is really wild that we're already talking about Wemby in that class. Let me help you out here with your defensive player of the year rankings. I'll give you the Vegas odds on it. Gobert's the heavy favorite, minus 900. Wemby is right behind him. He's number 2 at plus 1,000. Then you've got Jared Allen, Bam, and Anthony Davis. Bam and Anthony Davis have had excellent defensive seasons. I expect them to be on all defensive teams. But the fact that Wemby is ranked that high, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think it's an error. There's a reason for it.
He's the second. So I can't.
Odds are second in it.
I can't, shouldn't, and would not vote, obviously, on NBA awards since I vote on those. But I will say this to people watching. I don't think it's likely that he's going to be the defensive player of the year. I think it is more likely than 10-1. As my first reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, second, but 10-1 is, you said plus 1,000? I mean, that's.
Yeah, that's why I think it's plus 1,000, and that's why I think Gobert is such a heavy favorite, really, right? Minus 900. I mean, you're playing through the Wolves defense, and he's the centerpiece of it.
Hey, can I add a point? Yeah, I just want to agree with you. The other thing about that Wolves team is they are not very good offensively, and so it's not. If you put Gobert on whatever the Celtics, and the same thing was true, awesome. But to your point, playing through their defense and often winning. They're not good offensively. Like, he is arguably their most important player, since that's what they do. To your point about playing through defensively, they're not a balanced basketball team, and Gobert is the reason that they're able to win games when they don't score enough points.
Yeah, I mean, it's what Anthony Edwards, who famously hates the All-Star game and All-Star weekend, said. He wanted Rudy Gobert to get an All-Star nod because he said, "Hey, our defense is the best in the league, and he's our best defensive player." So that's what I think. I wanted to run this past you too before we move on from Wemby. I'm sure that you've heard this. There's been like some rumblings among the media and among fans about how much Wemby likes San Antonio, right? There's been these reports that, hey, if they don't, he wants to win. He's all about winning. And if they don't start winning, he's going to want out sooner than later. I think it's a little silly. It's his first season in San Antonio. They're figuring out who he is. He's figuring out who they are. To say that as a rookie, he's already planning his escape from San Antonio feels a little premature to me. However, I will point out that they won 22 games last year, which not a lot. This year, they'd have to finish out 9-8 to beat that mark. They haven't won 3 in a row all season. So, like, how much credence do you give to this whole thing? And how much pressure do you think San Antonio is actually under here?
I think massive pressure a year from now to maybe the year after that. I don't think they're under pressure right now. And by the way, like, lose all the games you want to. Make all the draft. Get as good a draft pick as you can. Draft well. It's not easy to recruit guys to San Antonio. I'm going to make a guess about why they shouldn't worry. That is as superfluous as those people who are speculating he might leave. So it's equally rooted in logic, which is say it's not. I'm just guessing. But from a distance, this is a dude who likes to read, who talks about going to bedtime early, right? He's got his early bedtime when nobody, including Papa's left, calls him. I mean, he is, by maybe some standards and definitions, especially like wealthy young people, boring. And so there is a world where being in San Antonio is not as significant a problem for his lifestyle as maybe somebody else who's a multimillionaire at his age. You could, whatever, Moby Dick is just as interesting in San Antonio as it is in Vegas. And you sleep the same, maybe better, at 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday in San Antonio as you do in Vegas or New York. So it's way, not only is it way too early, this is a dude, if anyone's going to say to themselves, sure, San Antonio next 20 years, let's go. Not that he will, but that's the kind of personality that might lean into that.
I mean, I think it's kind of silly because it's not like Pop forgot how to be a good basketball coach, right? Like right now he's doing developmental stuff with Wemby, and we've seen the development. I mean, he's taking leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Like it's not taking, years for this kid. It's been taking games for him to make these astronomical achievements. Not to mention that the Spurs have been historically a very good organization that have won multiple championships through various eras.
That's a great point. If Kawhi Leonard doesn't have a falling out with that organization, they are still competitive. And to your point, we've talked about Pop. R.C. Buford is outstanding at what he does and is wildly respected. And like, is it easy to build a winner? No. But in a city like that, it's not. But Sam Presti's doing it. Minnesota looks like they're doing it. San Antonio, I'm not. Now I'm not worried. You just reminded me. They're so well run. It's going to be fine. Not worried.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I lied. I said that was going to be the last Wemby topic, but we can't talk enough about this guy. Producer Aaron brings up a really good point. We've talked about the 65 game threshold for awards,
right?
And how a lot of guys are going to get left off of it. Donovan Mitchell just the other day, he's out. Embiid is out. Tyrese Halliburton. There's just a ton of guys who aren't going to be able to qualify for it. All NBA is 15 guys, right? And it's positionless this year.
Which is interesting too. Yeah, big change.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
And you could you're just picking the 15 best. It's almost kind of like ranking your 15 MVP candidates. Is this too soon to already be talking about him in his rookie season? Because there's a lot of guys who aren't that you would normally have on there. And now all of a sudden you're going to be moving down the list.
It's not too soon. As I think about it, because I'll vote for that too. There's no Embiid, but a lot of times the center position is extraordinarily even the forwards positions can be kind of crowded, right? They all are. No, I mean I'm trying. You just named 3 guys who are easily top 15. I think Halliburton is easily top 15 guys.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so he'll probably be on there as I think about all the guys that are.
He might. I mean, we'd have to really go through it, but just the fact that we're even considering it, and maybe that's a topic for another show for us to get into the weeds and really find out like where we'd have Wemby cut. Because look, what did Draymond just say? Draymond put him at top 15, right? So that would put him on all NBA. If
that's
incredible,
actually the case. By the way,
it really is.
That's
It really is. All right. One more that I wanted to hit for you coming up this weekend, and this is a big one for all kinds of different reasons. We've got Warriors against the Lakers in LA on Saturday. There had been some question about whether or not Steph would be back. He had some ankle issues. We got cleared earlier this week. He's practicing with the team today on Friday. He's expected to suit up against those Lakers on Saturday in Los Angeles. This is a big one, Bill.
Here's one. In fact, my son is expecting me to take him to the game, which is not.
Yeah, you're taking him. Your son, whose name you totally remember. You wrote it down.
Yeah, good old Henry. No, I am not gonna. I think that's probably not gonna happen. But it's a huge game, and it's amazing.
Why are we not taking the lad to the game?
Money. Is that a fair?
Fair enough.
By the way,
you got CBS Sports money,
right? So. Here's the thing, and this is like very first world problems. You and I go to games on credentials, right? So the first time I took Henry to a game where I was stunned how much it cost, and I call up a buddy who goes to Lakers games all the time. He's like, bro, that's what NBA games cost. I didn't even. No wonder these guys are good. Yeah, good. That's expensive. Also, like getting tickets, and I got some other stuff I got to do.
Listen, this is definitely first world sports broadcaster, sports reporter problems. But I am 1,000% with you that, okay, the Phillies were in the National League Championship last year, and the year before that, they went to the World Series. I paid for tickets for those. You and I are big soccer fans. I do soccer tourism trips. Last year, I went to this past season. Actually, I went to 4 different games, including a Champions League game. It was amazing. I don't generally pay for tickets because that's madness. Like,
So,
I'll go if you're paying me to go, but I know that people listening are like, that's ridiculous. How elite. Yeah.
I mean, I got 4 tickets to every Cubs game during their World Series run from my former employer, just because they were, I mean, I was like giving tickets to cousins, right? So I'm just not used to paying for tickets. But on the game itself, what's amazing to me, and I know we know this, and I guess it could change if one of these teams go on a run, I guess, but they're going to play each other in the 9-10, almost certainly, it feels like. And which
is wild.
I think each of those teams can make runs for different reasons. And I think Shaq is full of it, whatever, for saying nobody fears LeBron, get out of here. It's a preview. The Saturday game is a preview of one team that can take out somebody they shouldn't, just going away. Poof, smoke when we get to April, which is not that far from now when we actually get to the playing games. Crazy.
Yeah, the Lakers are 1 up on the Warriors in that 9-10 matchup, and then they're 2 and 3 games back of the Mavs, respectively, to get out of that 9-10, which they desperately want. You mentioned the Shaq thing. Shaq, for people who missed it, he had Mario Chalmers on, and Mario Chalmers said that, I get killed for saying this, but, people didn't really fear LeBron. And Shaq went, I totally agree. Like, we feared Michael Jordan and people feared Kobe, but who fears LeBron? This is a ridiculous thing. What are we talking about? He's one of the greatest players of all time. Yeah. What does fear him mean?
So I covered Mario Chalmers, and I when he was in Miami, and I learned this. It's a good rule to live by in basketball. If you are agreeing with Mario Chalmers on something, you have done something wrong in your sort of process of thinking about stuff. Number 1. Number 2, remember it was the Big 3 era, and this is not a joke. When we would write and talk about the Big 3, Mario Chalmers was convinced, and not necessarily in this order, that the Big 3 was LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Mario Chalmers. Now, he had a big shot against Kansas, or for Kansas against Memphis in college. And here's the last thing. I think this is what actually is going on, and we don't have to belabor this, but it's certainly people fear LeBron. They just don't like LeBron. Like, that's the quiet part out loud. LeBron is not universally beloved socially in his own league that he dominates in the way that Jordan was, right? Jordan was friends with Barkley and friends with Oakley and hung out with his own teammates all the time, and they went gambling together. That was part of when he wasn't punching them in the face practice, that was part of the deal. Kobe, more of a mentor role, standoffish, but had like connections with guys. Guys don't like LeBron. There's a jealousy factor. He's a little aloof. He sucks all the oxygen out of the room. He's not a bad guy. Anyway, we don't have to talk about it too much, but Shaq, I think, is probably a little jealous of LeBron's legacy. And Mario Chalmers always thought LeBron got more shine than he did, which is,
amazing that Mario Chalmers was like, well, what about me for the spotlight? Why LeBron all the time? That's very funny. I just think it's like, what does that even mean? Right. It's not grade school where we're like, oh, I'm afraid of the guy. And like, we're going to get into some sort of physical altercation in context of basketball. Why wouldn't you be fearful of him? I mean, he's done everything you could possibly do in this game. He's won championships with 3 different organizations. He bootstrapped an absolutely moribund Cavs franchise, not once, but twice, and rebooted Miami on the fly. And rebooted the Lakers on the fly too. So I just,
for the amount of time that most guys play in the league, if they're lucky, their careers, LeBron James single-handedly just made it to the finals. Just like he had help, but he devoured legacies, careers, opportunities for guys to get the ultimate prize by his mere presence. And not that he's going to do it again, but if the Lakers get out of the play-in, they could take somebody out that's a pretty good. You and I have discussed this a lot. I think they could take out the Thunder or the Timberwolves. So it's just, of course, people fear him. They don't like him. Shaq and Mario should just say what they're saying if they're going to say it.
I encourage people. So I have some buddies in town, some friends from Philadelphia. They came in town. They're big NBA junkies too. And because we're super cool guys, at the bar last night, over a couple of adult beverages, we went back and like looked through some of the the early Cavs teams that LeBron had, like a LeBron who was still figuring out who he is and how to play in the NBA and what I can be. Go back and look at some of those teams through those rosters and like some of the guys that he played alongside that he turned into championship contenders. And then tell me that LeBron James isn't one of the greatest to do it.
Even those Cleveland teams on the back end, like include.
Oh yeah, on the back
Kyrie
end
was there. Yeah, there was some garbage. And by the way, the irony is some of the garbage was LeBron forcing David Griffin, who was then the GM, to make moves that were Timothy Mozgov. You can go down the list, but then he just carried the team anyway. I mean, Kyrie was amazing, but there were stretches there where it was, And there was, I should know this because I was there every day and I cover the team every day. There was the finals where Love was out and then Kyrie got hurt early, or maybe it was the other way around where they didn't win, but LeBron played extraordinarily well just with nobody. I think, of course, people fear me. What a joke.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We got a couple more games that we want to run past you for our weekend forecast. So we're going to do that next.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, John Gonzalez, Bill Ryder here on Beyond the Arc, wrapping up our first week of episodes. We're very excited about it. We're going to be coming here to you, talking about the NBA every single day, Monday through Friday, taking weekends off, but we'll be back to give you 5 days a week about the NBA. Two more games that we should talk about quickly. The Knicks at the Kings on Saturday. Intriguing matchup. The Knicks, they just got OG back. They've won 2 in a row. They beat the Blazers last night. Massive effort from Jalen Brunson. He had 45. They're on this 4-game road trip, Bill, where they've got the Warriors and the Nuggets before they return home for a 1 p.m. game against the Nets. Not easy. 1 game up on the Magic for 4th. And then you got the Kings, who have also won 2 in a row. They're only a half game up on the Suns for the 6th seed. Who do you think needs this one more?
I think the Kings do. And I was just thinking as you were talking, it's not a vacuum. They're in different conferences. I like the Knicks more. And even if they were in the same conference, I would like the Knicks more. I think their ceiling is higher. I think we've talked about, I think they're now, I shouldn't do this off. I think they're 14-2 now when OG plays for
they are.
Some crazy. Yeah. It's amazing, but they're not in the Western Conference and there's a margin for error. And really, I think depending on injuries, I don't think they will slide. I think the Knicks could slide a little, depending on, and still be okay to be dangerous in the playoffs. I don't think that's true for Sacramento. We've talked a lot about the fact they're really exciting offensively, and they have to outscore teams because they are atrocious defensively, and how they are similar to last year. But the West has gotten so much better that it looks like they're not as good. They are. They're just everyone else has improved. So I think every game is more important to the Kings because I think the West is just brutal right now, especially for that team.
I understand why you're looking at it that way. I almost kind of go because the West is so loaded that this is already a foregone conclusion for the Kings. The Kings aren't going anywhere this year. I hate to
they're
say
a first round exit.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say
Either
this
way
for Kings fans, but like I look at this team, and as you mentioned, defensively, especially when their 3 best players are arguably Fox, Sabonis, and Monk, right? And Monk, he's my 6th man.
I love Malik. Yeah, Malik Monk.
He's kind of become. I want to run this past you. I kind of have thought about him as like new Lou Williams, like instant offense off the bench, 6th guy. Doesn't play any defense whatsoever, but is an absolute bucket. Love watching him play. But you have those 3 guys on the floor, and you're not stopping anybody.
But there's a window. He's gone this summer. I mean, it's not like.
Yeah, probably, right?
You're not going to win now, but you kind of need to your point.
Yeah, you do.
That's an important piece.
And you're not going to win. So I look at this team and I go, all right, you're barely out of the play-in. You're a half game up on the Suns. Even if you stay out of the play-in, what's that really get you? Because your remaining strength of schedule is brutal. It's 7th. They've got this. They still have to play the Celtics, the Thunder, the Clippers, the Pelicans, the Suns.
Wow.
And this game against the Knicks that's coming up, it's one of 2 games that they have against the Knicks. So I think that this is kind of like
6 games. Did you say 6? That's 6 games you just rattled off.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with the 2 games against the Knicks.
They're going to win 2 or 3 of those games.
So tough stuff, sledding.
Maybe.
So that's why I think it's, Godspeed to the Kings, but your fate is already written with the Knicks. It's important for them to stay in that 4th. They're 1 game up on the Magic for the 4th spot, which would let them have a first round home playoff series. Right. I think it's more important for the Knicks. I like the Knicks prospects better. Godspeed to the Kings, but should be a fun game. One more for you that we also are excited about. You got the Suns against the Bucks in Milwaukee on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm
Bucks
excited about that.
Just barely holding on to that 2nd spot in the Eastern Conference. And then the Suns are what the Suns are, which is, question mark, right? They had all 3 guys last night against the Celtics. Booker, Beal, and Kevin Durant all went for 20 or more, still lost. And I know that says more about the Celtics than it says about the Suns.
I think it does. Yeah.
Still,
I'll say this:
had all 3.
Bradley Beal's been looking okay in
He's
some of these games. I mean, he doesn't look washed, and I think there was. So, all right, you know where I come down on. This is the thing. This is the full disclosure. So 20 to 25 games is what most GMs and coaches use at the start of the year to evaluate their basketball teams. They feel like that's a big enough, depends on the organization, that's a big enough sample size to kind of make judgments, make decisions. Doc Rivers' 25th game at head coach is a week from Sunday. So I think he's 20 or 21 in. So
you marked it on your
I did.
Circled
and I
it?
got the stats. Yeah, they're now 11-10 under Doc. I really want. I'm sorry, Bucks fans, I love you, and I like John Horst, the GM, and I have friends who work in the organization, and I got family in Milwaukee. I want them to lose the rest of the game so I can write the story that I want to write a week from Monday at CBSSports.com. So you know how this works. You sort of root for your own what you want to write about, right? I love this game, and because for me, not for anyone else, there's an emotional investment, and because I think the Suns will get up for it. I also think it's an interesting just test of, and maybe I'm wrong that Phoenix will get up for it, but I think they will. What does it look like when they play an equally talented team that has its own sort of issues and drama? How does Phoenix respond? Because I still don't. I have a bet with you over. We've talked about a lot, but I still don't know what I think about Phoenix, and these are the kind of games I want to watch just to get a better sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that they haven't been together enough to like really get a handle on this team. Yes, they were playing the Celtics last night, so they do kind of get a pass there because the Celtics have basically steamrolled everybody but the Nuggets this season.
Oh my God, man.
They're outrageously good, and I hate it.
Yeah.
But I do like these starter kit assembly on the fly deals where you go, okay, we're just gonna like try these pieces together and hope that they work without like really understanding if they do. I'm skeptical. I'm dubious about the Suns because eventually you are just what your record is, and like what you're just going to turn it on in the playoffs.
For good reason.
History has shown us that that's very difficult to do with a team in its first year.
I know that these players are different and things are, but I is the core in Phoenix right now on paper, personalities aside, better than the core, the different versions of the core that was in Brooklyn. Like.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen this story before. They're not that deep. The thing is, I don't know. Devin Booker has made an NBA finals, right? And has gone up in an NBA finals.
Kevin Durant has been an MVP in the finals.
Right. Twice. Yep. When he should have been.
And Bradley Beal exists.
And Bradley Beal's a guy, which is what to say, like when he plays well. So yes, I agree with you that they are deeply flawed because the process of putting them together is deeply flawed by an owner who thought that buying an NBA team was like fantasy sports, and he's going to find out that it's not. I don't think the Suns are making an NBA finals, but could the Suns be a really talented team that wins a series or almost wins two series that they shouldn't? Maybe that's for me the question.
That is the question. And it is a big maybe because when we're looking just real quick before we wrap here, when we're looking at that play-in spot, right? The 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's crazy, dude.
The odds are right now, depending on which models you like, but the odds are, and also the Vegas odds are that the Mavs, the Suns, the Warriors, and the Lakers are going to be in the play-in, and you're going to lose one of them before you even get out of the first game.
And by the way,
outrageous.
For me, the clearly best two teams of that foursome are currently in the 9-10.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I talking about fear, I fear the Lakers and the Warriors more than I fear the Mavs and the Suns. So it's going to be fun, though. We're going to see how it shakes out.
That is.
And this has been fun. We got a whole week of shows in the books. We got so many more for you coming up. If you've enjoyed some of this, please tell a friend about it. Please go and do all the things that we talked about.
Even if you haven't.
Even find some friends. Talk
That's
to your
my
neighbors.
joke on radio.
Yeah. I mean, any of that stuff. Tell people about our show. You see if you're watching on YouTube, you can download Beyond the Arc with a QR code. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts. We really would appreciate your support because we're going to be around for a while. We're going to try to make it a good show for you guys. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. We're going to be back on Monday doing the 3-man weave with Ashley Nicole Moss. And in the interim, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and please enjoy your weekend.